All right, so we're going to be covering topicals, which includes liniments, poultices, and plasters. There are soaks. I don't do a lot of soaks. You can. There's certainly a lot of places online where you can get the materials to either make these yourself or have patients buy them. Eventually, Daniel Scryer and I, do you guys know Daniel Scryer? He's one of the instructors in the herb program, but he and I have become friends, and so we have started to create liniments together. I've been making liniments for about, almost 10 years now, and well, about 9 years. And I have to say that I steep them a lot longer than most people. I usually don't start to draft them off, and harvest them for at least 3 years. So I have them in my basement, and I'm going to take you on a little tour today. But I love liniments, so we'll cover liniments, poultices, and plasters, and how you can use them to great effect in your clinic. And also, this is kitchen medicine. This is stuff to keep around the house. This is good first aid stuff, right? So I travel with a few of these. I do travel light, but I do take some things with me when I travel. My wife laughs until we need it. People are like, oh, why do you carry that stuff? And then they're like, hey, I got this going on. Do you have any? And I'm like, yep. So it's good to travel. Anytime you travel, you wanna take like curing pill. You want to take plenty of that. Any kind of indigestive upset, belly binder. Maybe some Ganmao Ling or Yin Chao San, right? Some kind of first aid thing. And I take like a small bottle of one of each of these 3 liniments just in case, which have come in handy actually, because one guy kind of maybe sprained his wrist, and I had that stuff. It was really helpful. So we'll talk about liniments first. Interesting, it comes from the Latin linare, which means to anoint or to bless or to smear. So this is a medicated topical preparation that is more watery. Okay, so this is generally made with some kind of alcohol. Thus you hear the translations of wine or liquor. They're not talking about the liquor that you would drink, but they're implying that it's made with some kind of alcohol, traditionally some kind of rice wine or rice liquor. I mean, as long as there's been people in grain, there's been people fermenting grain to get inebriated. And so people who had a lot of sort of interconnection with the herbs and the plants realized that some of them contain essential oils that are water soluble and some are more alcohol soluble. And so these have been used with less viscosity than like lotions and creams that make it easy to penetrate into the skin. And they are meant to be applied to the skin with friction, right? These are meant to be applied with friction. Right? It's not just some cream you just like gently rub in there. Like it's meant to be, you create some heat from the friction of you rubbing the skin, right? And that heat from that friction helps to penetrate more deeply. So you'll soak herbs in alcohol to extract their medicinal properties. And I've given you a couple of links that you can go see. There's one is the Scar Family Dit.Jiao, which is kind of funny. They're a funny site. They're kind of like, liniments. They're really martial arts. So you can buy all kinds of cool stuff to kill people with, as well as Dit.Jiao's. Very cool site. You can also go to WellPoint Oriental Medicine. There's a blog on Chinese herbal liniments. These are easy to make. I don't have the book in front of me, but Tooth from the Tiger's Mouth has a bunch of recipes, or like 3 or 4 recipes you can start to make. And that's how I got my start. And then I came across this book called something like Herbal Medicine for Martial Artists. And that had a really cool list of stuff. And then Bob Flaws has a great book. I'll go get these upstairs. I didn't have time to get them this morning, but he has a books on medicinal wines and elixirs, which is very cool. And if you scout around, there's some really cool books on liniments and things like that. And I will get some and show you at the break. But these are easy to make, easy to purchase. I just went to like Walmart You can also go online. I've actually found these, later on, I found these better Italian jars that seal a little bit more nicely. Gallon jars, you know, you just basically get the herbs, you just throw them in a jar, and you just add the cheapest vodka you can find. So when I go to the liquor store, I generally go to the bottom shelf, and I look like way in the back. All the ones that have lots of dust over them, like that's the ones I get. In fact, now when I go to, I've wisened up, when I go to Rehoboth, I have remembered that Delaware has no sales tax. And so I get out the shopping cart. I go to Atlantic Liquors. Shout out to Atlantic Liquors. Awesome place right on Coastal Highway. I go in there with a shopping cart, and I get about 10 gallons of vodka.
I'm guessing you have quite the reputation in Rehoboth Beach.
It has quite the scene, but doesn't it it's quite the conversation piece when you roll up with 20 bottles of vodka. They're like, I'm coming to your party. I don't even drink. And it's kind of funny. So then, you know, and then I got a couple bottles of wine on top of that for my wife. And so, you know, it's like $10 like for a half a gallon. So a gallon will cost you about $20, maybe another 8 to 10 in herbs, another few bucks for the jar. And, you know, you sell these at like a minimum of 10 to 15 bottles for 2 ounces. You do the math, you're making over $300 for a gallon of liniment. God bless America. All right. So, but it is great, and it's nice. And I really wanted to do it because I wanted to give my patients something to take home with them or to have at their home that was like easy to get, easy to use, and inexpensive. And, you know, they don't have to wait, you know, 3, 4, 5 days for it to come in the mail, you know. Okay. And, and it's like, it's a nice thing to be able to like supply to people, you know, they really feel very cared for. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give people something that they could use at home. All right. So these are really simple. So let me just show you some of the things that I've got. All right. Let me see. Okay. All right. So here's an example of some gallon jars, right? So this is the Dit Jow, okay? And then this batch was made in 1919. I made this at the beginning, right? Sort of the beginning of COVID. Here's some tendon lotion that I made a couple years ago in May. This is a new formula. This is sort of like Posemon that Daniel and I just made. We'll tell you more about that. And this is a new liniment that we came up with for Wind Cold Bee. I really wanted to come up with a couple of arthritis formula, 3 arthritis formulas, one for like wind cold, one for wind damp, and one for wind heat, where one is like, well, they're all for wind cold damp, but one is more predominant for cold, one's more predominant for heat, one's more predominant for damp. So as you can see, I'm a big fan of the whole writing things onto this, and I come downstairs, and every couple of days I stir this up, you know, like I'll shake it up a little bit, right? And then I pray over it, right? Shake them up, pray over it, to agitate it a little bit. And I do that about every couple, 3 days, usually every couple days, kind of like on a little schedule. And I remember that guy, Emoto, he wrote The Hidden Messages in Water. So I think it's a big deal to write. So this says, Ya Allah, Ya Shafi. Shafi is Arabic for healer, or the healing. And this is Allah, just means the one, the healer. And so I find it, I don't know, to me, maybe it does nothing at all, but I kind of sense that it does. So I keep doing that. All right. So these are some liniments that you can make yourself, right? These, put them in just gallon jars. I'll show you some other gallon jars later. All right. This is like what we're calling like the heart dragon. This is sort of like a Posemon, which is like a stage 2. All right. And then the Dit Jow, that's more stage 1. And then the tendon lotion, that's more stages 2 and 3. This you can do for all 3 stages, but it's really better for 2 and 3. And this, of course, is going to be really good for especially like the first couple stages, as well as acute flare-ups of old injuries, right? Things that are worse in the cold, better with heat, right? So this is like a lot of hot herbs. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got an array of stuff for you. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I've kind of done this in a particular order. And this is like a drop in the bucket of what is available out there. And I'm actually out of a number of things. So Lhasa OMS has these CBD clinic pain relief creams. They are mentholated. And when I say mentholated, they are highly mentholated. You open the lid and it's like, whew. All right. Here's the Golden Sunshine paste, right? And it is dark, baby. And it is, oh, it is really strong. It's very mentholated. It's got about a pound of menthol in here. And we actually made this, with menthol crystals. And boy, you pour those menthol crystals in there and I feel like I should, we had to put on masks. It was like so intense. But these are nice pastes that can be used in stage 1. The Camwo brand San Huang San or Herbal Ice. San Huang San means 3 herb powder, but they've got San Huang Gao. Gao is like a goopy paste, a salve, right? And it's called San Huang because it's made with the 3 yellow powders. You can see it. It's actually very brown looking, but you can see on the inside of the lid, you can see the golden quality of it. It's like a muddy paste. This is pretty thick. It has a consistency of like, moist mud. Daniel Scryer and I have made our own, which we call Dragon Ice. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay. Healing salve, better and safer than ice. So this was actually from our first batch we made with coconut oil. And as it dries, you can see like a little hole kind of forms in there. But this is made with beeswax, local beeswax, organic coconut oil, and these other powders that are used in place of ice. So what you would do is you would use this on anything that you would use on ice, right? So this is a salve. These 2 are salves, and you can use these as well. This really is good for any stage, but because it's predominantly counter irritants of like wintergreen and menthol. But these have special herbs, very cold herbs to reduce inflammation. They also have herbs in here to break blood stasis, right? So if you sprained your ankle, this would be like the first thing you'd put on, or maybe a poultice of ice for about 5 minutes to take down some of the inflammation and swelling. But after that, you're just freezing things in place. And then you would massage this in like 3-4 times a day, okay? And you would use that in place of ice. You can also make a poultice out of this. So, this is what I have. Actually, like, I carry around this case. It's basically just like a little, I don't know, like an artist case or toolbox. And in that, I keep all this stuff. So if I have to visit somebody, I've got bandage, I've got waterproof tape, industrial scissors, and some gauze pad. I've also got some 4x4s, 4x4 gauze pads in there as well. And so what you can do is you can make like spread this on with like a tongue depressor or a popsicle stick or plastic spoon, whatever. And then apply that to the gauze, right? And then put that over the wound and then cover it with a bandage, right? Or tape it down or cover it with a couple other gauze pads and bandage that down. And you can keep that on as a plaster or poultice, okay? So that's something you can do. You can either apply it just with your fingers or you can make like a poultice out of it. So here's some other ones that I've had. This is an earlier one, Leaping Tiger Trauma Liniment. This is an even earlier one, old style trauma linets. So these are deep dot gels for stage 1. All right, so this is for strains, sprains, bruises, and sore, achy muscles. Okay, I make my own labels. I just, you can't really see it here. These are old, but you just go online to Avery and you can print out labels. And this is Arnicare. So Arnica gel is really nice for stage 1. I have found that for about 50% of the folks, Arnica is great, and then for another 50%, Arnica doesn't do much. You can also get Arnica Montana to take internally. Would you share your site so we can forward our patients your products? Yes, I will do that. All right. I happen to be one of those people where Arnica doesn't really do much, unfortunately, which is kind of a drag, but it's nice to have anyway. It comes out as a very clear gel. Very good stuff for some people. All right, here's some tendon lotion, which is like a stage 2 and 3. Some Wanhua oil, which is really good also for stage 2. So here's some of the, I just bottled this for a patient today. I haven't gotten to the labels yet, but this is like our version of Posamon. You can see the golden color. It's really, really nice. I know it looks a little bit like urine, but what can I say? And this is the Posamon. Have you guys ever seen this before?
No.
So it comes in a metal tin. And it comes in a jar like this, right? So this stuff, the oil, it's made with all oils. We used, I think it was camelina oil, but they use a lot of different, like oil of wintergreen, oil of jojoba, oil of peppermint, so it is very thick, and it gets in everything. I mean, everything. So that's why they sell it in these metal tins with a bunch of like wrapping in there to keep it tight, because it gets into everything. It's really quite extraordinary, and it's on your hands for like the rest of the day. So I usually apply it with gloves because once it's on my hands, it's like it infects everything. So here's a Zhenggu Shui, which literally means, that's the Zheng in Zhengqi, which correct, rectify, heal, right? So and Gu is bone, Shui is water. So this is like bone healing water. This is really good for stress fractures, fractures, injuries to the bones, injuries to the ligaments, okay? Quan Lung oil, and we're gonna go over, all of this, but I'm just kind of showing you what is a little bit of what's out here. I finally found this stuff, which is actually similar to something my grandfather on my mother's side used to make. He was he was an electrician for the Balmer Gas and Electric Company, and but he did a lot of like he also helped his brother-in-law with like home improvements and stuff. So they did like he did a lot of manual labor, and he used to make this stuff. He would mix turpentine with a couple other things. I don't remember what it was. And I finally found this. This is Dr. J.H. McLean's volcanic oil. You see that?
Uh-huh.
And the #1 ingredient is turpentine oil. All right, turpentine oil. I don't know if you can see that.
What does that feel like, Time, when you put it on?
It feels quite hot.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But it's only 6%. It's not so bad. I mean, it's hot. They call it volcanic oil for a reason. But it's not uncomfortably so. It actually feels pretty good, right? And so he always smelled like turpentine. It was kind of funny. He'd be, because he was outside. I mean, he was working outside all the time. He built substations. And so you have the Tiger liniment, which is similar to the Tiger balm, but it's in a liquid form, okay? And then you've got these plasters. There's a number of plasters. So one is the 701 plaster. This also is highly, highly mentholated. It's camphor and menthol and methyl salicylate. And what I like about it is it comes in these rolls, right? Okay, so here's the side that you would apply to the skin, right? And then here's the backing. And the nice thing is you get some scissors and you can cut this to whatever size you want, right?
It's an herbal fruit roll-up.
It's a roll up. It's like, I know, it's like a herb roll up, only you don't want to eat these. Yeah, and I mean, I wish you could smell over the computer, because this is a powerful herb, powerful concentration of menthol, wintergreen, camphor, and methyl salicylate. So this is called 701. Trying to get so the glare isn't often, right? So you can get this by the can. It's a Dida Zhongtong Yao Gao medicated plaster, which basically that means it's like Dida, hit fall, strike fall. Zhongtong means correct pain. Zhong is in Zhongqi, Tong is pain. Yao refers to sort of like a solution, and then Gao is like the paste, and they spread this on this, and so you just peel this off, right? You would just peel it off like that, and then this would be on the top, and then this would go against the skin. The Wu-Tang Clan, great group. They had their own Chinese plaster as well. Right, same, it looks almost exactly the same. This one's a little bit darker, a little bit more red, right? So, it comes with a little insert inside, if I can get it out. It's being difficult. But it comes with a little plaster, a little pamphlet inside that tells you, all about it. So I highly recommend these, because again, you can cut these to size, which is nice. And you can either give them to this one's nice because it has like an extra plastic thing, which keeps kind of the odor from escaping. Because your storage area is going to really, be a little bit nasally noisy when you go in there. So I've just included a couple of other patches. I'm out of some patches that I really like. I really like the Huato brand patches. But there's a couple other ones that are pretty good. So there's Golden Sunshine's Pain Terminator, right, patch. These I just got. I haven't tried these out yet. It must be good. You got some frolicking deer. That's nice. And then you've got the Yunnan Bayao plaster. And then these are really good. They're expensive by Way Laboratories, and they're called the Whitey patch. And they are phenomenal. They are so good, but they are really expensive. I really like the Huato brand, which I don't have here. I just ran out of those. And also the Tiger Balm people have a patch as well that they've made. So those are all really good. Okay. Yeah.
The Whitey patch, is that one for pain? Because the Unibayao is for bleeding, right?
It is for bleeding. It helps to stop bleeding. And the Whitey patches are generally for pain conditions. But the Yunnan Bayao, as it stops blood, it also has a lot of blood stasis herbs in it. So it is good for, as it moves the stasis. And there are some other things that are analgesic in nature in it. So you can use it for pain as well, because it's got camphor in it. It's got capsaicin, which is like the main ingredient in chili powder. In India, they call it boswellia or boswellia. And it's got methyl salicylate. So it has all these counter-irritant type external analgesics, as well as the blood moving, stop bleeding, but really like for, move blood stasis, right? I mean, you think like, well, wait a minute, it moves blood stasis, but it stops bleeding. How does that do that? It's because when the blood is flowing like it should, it will actually clot easier. That's the kind of like the weird irony. Yeah.
That's really cool. I think Celeste was telling us that isn't that formula like highly guarded?
Yes.
It's very hard to find out any info on it.
Yeah, I think there's like 1 or 2 families that have the the formula ingredient, and it is a very closely guarded secret. And this is what the Chinese gave to the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese were eating this like daily. They were taking Yunnan Baiyao all the time, and it was interesting. So what the Americans and the British and maybe some others discovered is that they would find these deceased North Vietnamese fighters, and after they'd been killed, unfortunately, and what they would find though is that they would have like they would have signs of multiple gunshot wounds. Like they'd find these bodies with like 7, 8, 9 gunshot wounds, and that were older, that were not like just from the recent past. And so they were like, how are these people like running around? And they would find, dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon like hundreds of these people with like multiple gunshot wounds that had been sent back out into the field. And they're like, how is this happening? And then they discovered Yunnan Baiyao left behind in, when they would recover certain areas that had been vacated by the North Vietnamese fighters. They would find all this stuff left behind, maps and things like that, and surgical supplies, and they found all this weird powder in these and they didn't have nice labels on them, so they were like, we don't know what this is. And then finally, when they've like captured some people, they got them to explain that that they were given this powder by the Chinese. So it's pretty.
And they were ingesting it? That's how it's used?
It at very high doses, yes.
Lordy.
It's crazy. It almost sounds like something out of a movie.
It kind of, yeah. I mean, it almost sounds like science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Again, I doubt every single soldier got it, but like a very high majority of soldiers were given like large doses of Yunnan Baiyao. So if they ever got like shot or stabbed or hit by mines or whatever, that they wouldn't bleed out in the field. Also, they didn't have a lot of like, they didn't have their access to blood transfusions the way we did. Yeah. So interesting backstory about Yunnan Baiyao. So it helps to move the blood, but it also helps the blood to clot naturally. Yeah. So Naz says that her husband loves the Huato patches, and yeah, they're really good. I really like them a lot. And if they're not that expensive either, which is nice. Yeah. So sometimes I just give them to my patients. Sometimes I charge them like $1 or something, Yeah. But anyway, so just briefly getting back to the page 1 on poultices. So liniments are, again, just very, very liquidy. These are alcohol-based, a mixture of alcohol and water. Ideally, you would get 100 proof. 100, I mean, yes, no. 100 proof, yes.
Yeah.
Because 200 proof is 100% alcohol, right? So it's hard to get 100 proof nowadays. They've kind of, gone to the cheap. It's like 80%. It's like 80 proof, I think, like that. So it's not quite, not quite 50-50, because again, some of the herbs are soluble in water. Some of the herbs are soluble in alcohol. And you would simply like combine these together and you soak them, and then, time comes, you harvest them and you filter them and you put them in a bottle, and you can offer them to your patients. And again, that's meant to be rubbed in to the point where you feel the heat of the friction, and you keep rubbing that in, right? And then poultices. So this is more of like a soft mass, moist. It's kind of like mud, and you would spread this over a cloth, and then you would put this on your skin, and then you would kind of like wrap that. And these can be used at any stage 1, 2, or 3. In Chinese medicine, they're known as a gao. I jokingly said that the character includes the foul-smelling substance radical mixed with mud. That, of course, is meant to be a joke. Please don't take me seriously with that. It's just meant to be a paste or an ointment. And my first experience with it was with my first beloved, who basically, for all intents and purposes, was like what we would call like a witch. She was really into like, we made, she taught me to make like all these tinctures. We used to make a lot of tinctures. This is like in the heart of New York City. We would go out to Montauk a lot. We would go out into like into Long Island. If you're from there, it's Long Island. And pick all these like herbs and stuff. A friend of ours was sort of like this really expert in like wild herbs, and we would make all this cool stuff. And I used to play baseball, and I was a catcher, and so my knees were they were a mess. And my knees were like always sore. My knees were always in pain. And so she made this poultice of like yellow mustard and cayenne and a little bit of olive oil, and then some other things that I wish to God I had written down. It was like about 3 or 4 other things, like these herbs that she kind of sprinkled in, made this paste, put this paste on a cloth, put it on my knee, wrapped it in saran wrap, and very briefly I'll describe my experience. So I was like, oh, that feels nice. Oh, that's quite warm. Wow, that's getting really hot. Okay, like now inwardly I'm thinking, I want to scream. And you know, you're in front of your beloved. You want to be stoic, right? So you want to be, you know, I'm just like, you know, biting my tongue. And it felt like somebody had inserted a hose into my knee joint and started pumping up air. And I felt this increasing pressure inside my knee. And it was really quite painful. And after I'd say about 15 minutes of me like gripping the seat of my chair, I mean, like literally, like I can't control it. Like tears are like slowly leaking out of my eyes. I'm just like, she's just like, just hang in there. And finally, like, I don't know, after an interminable amount of time, I felt this pop. Like literally, I mean, it was like I felt like something pop in my knee, and like a bubble had burst inside my knee joint, and all of a sudden, like it was like this blessed relief. I mean, like the angels were singing. It was like, I mean, it was like, oh my God! I was like, and I have to say, and this was in '92, and my knees have not hurt since.
Wow.
Yeah, and my knees were a mess, and it hurt like a mother. And then we did the next knee, which was like even worse. But you know, after like 15 minutes or so, I felt this pop and this incredible relief, and man, my knees have been great, you know. So I wish to God I'd written down what was in that, but. Anyway, that's the power of poultices. Like, most of us, though, are a little bit lazy. We don't want to, you know, make stuff like that. You know, I can talk to you a little bit more about this offline. I've been experimenting a little bit with essential oils over the years. And Jeffrey Yuen talked about how you would mix essential oils and dilute them a little bit with different oils, other oils, as like a carrier. And then you would apply them to the skin. Or actually, excuse me, before you'd apply them to the skin, you'd mix them with egg white. You'd mix it up with egg white. And apparently the albumin, I don't know much about this, maybe some of you know more. Apparently the protein in the albumin that makes albumin what it is, of the egg, is almost identical to the protein in our own collagen and connective tissue, which I thought was kind of neat. And so when you see things like, you know, mixed with egg white, they're really talking about absorbability. So you would mix it with some egg white, and then you would massage that into the area, and then you would pound it 9 times, like, which is like, you know, I guess the secret Taoist number for healing. But yeah, he was very clear about that. Like you mix it with egg white, you massage it in, and then you kind of like tap it 9 times. So poultices are really great. They're gauze, so like you'll see these online, and I highly recommend that you keep them in the house. You know, they're a little messy, and some of them are a little bit stinky, but you know, we're adults. Like, eat your peas. Like, just deal with it. Right? And they're really nice for your patient. And some of your patients are really going to get into that because it's like, you know, you can give them to them to take home and like deal with on their own. And they're nice because the patches, which is, they're great, the patches are great, but they don't often conform to bony joints, right? They're really good for low back, right? They're really good for thighs. You know, they're really good for, you know, like areas on the traps or necks where you can kind of get to that easily and things can adhere pretty easily. But if you've got like, you know, if you've got a bony patient like me with like a big acromion, or, you know, you've got somebody with like a problem with their elbow or knee, you know, it's hard to get a patch to really conform to the variety of that area anatomically, like especially like ankles and things like that. So the gauze are great for like ankles. You know, you just smear that on a couple of like gauze 4x4 gauze pads. You put that on there gently, and then you just gently tape that up. It's fantastic, right? And you know, it just washes off with soap and water. I've never had a single patient have any kind of allergic reaction to it. The nice thing is if it starts to irritate them, any kind of liniment, poultice, plaster, you know, just have them wash it off with soap and water. You know, there may be a residual, like especially if there's like a lot of like menthol and camphor and wintergreen, you know, it's going to take a little bit for that to subside. But if they keep washing it with soap and water, like warm soap and water, and then they dry it off and then wash it again, dry it off, wash it again, after 3 or 4 times, you don't feel much of anything. Now, again, I just want to make a real quick point about that, and then we'll take a break. If there's a lot of heat and inflammation in the area, and you put these gao on it, especially like the cold ones, like our Dragon Ice or you know, the San Wang San, or make it yourself, whatever, and the patient starts to feel like the area start to feel hotter and a little bit irritating, have them kind of hang in there, maybe peek under there to see if the skin itself looks irritated or if it just looks pink. Here's the thing, it's drawing the heat out of the skin and the tissue. And so that may feel hot. So see if they can hang in there a little bit. If it looks like really angry red, and maybe even like it's blistering a little bit, then take it off and have them wash it off. But it really shouldn't be a problem, especially like with the San Huang San, because those are cold herbs. You know, you're going to find this more with like people who maybe have had an old injury that's flaring up because they're working out in the garden, or they're working in the gym, or they're just working for their work. And they get like some flare up, and, you know, you're going to be using more stage 2, stage 3, which are warmer to even hot herbs. And so that might be a little bit irritating to their skin. But again, see if they can kind of hang in there a little bit. And if after about 5-10 minutes, if it doesn't get better, maybe even 15, if it doesn't get better, then they can, like, you know, take it off and wash the area, or just have them like peek and see, okay, you know, what's that looking like? I mean, if it's itchy, that's not a bad sign, right? If it like hurts, like just have them take it off. But like hot, itchy, that's the heat toxins coming out of the tissue, or penetrating into the tissue, right? Either way, it's like, depending on whether you're working with stage 1 or stage 2 and 3. All right, does that make sense? All right. So you can also mix it with like Vaseline, which is kind of okay. You can mix things with green tea. Alcohol is a little hot. I would recommend not doing that. And anytime you're using liniments and plasters or poultices, do not have them put a heating pad on top of that. Do not have them put a heat lamp on top of that. It could react with the herbal formulas, and it could, you know, it could damage the skin. It could become too irritating for the skin. So have them avoid the heating pad, have them avoid the hot lamp or heat lamp, things like that, or hot compress. Just let it do its work. Okay. All right. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll cover plasters a little bit, and then we'll go into review the 3 stages of trauma, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to use these. Okay, we'll come back at 10 o'clock. All right, so let's talk a little bit about plasters. So this is where something is not really directly on the skin, but is kind of sandwiched between two pieces of like either cheesecloth or thin cloth or gauze pads or gauze bandages. And then you would put that down and then wrap that and apply that to the skin and wrap that up. The key is that the cloth is breathable. So you're not going to really wrap this with saran wrap, right? So these are meant to be on for a long period of time. And so this is like what, excuse me, this is what these are, right? So the cloth that is on the back of these, the cloth that's on the back of these is much more breathable, right? Than like a bandage or tape, right? With the poultice, the intention is to drive, you know, the substance like in, right? Most of the plasters are going to be stage 2, stage 3. So you don't want to trap too much heat and warming thermal energy in, right? You want some of that to be able to escape a little bit, right? Because all of these are also very blood moving and chi moving, right? So you don't want to aggravate the damaged tissue already, okay? So these are like, you know, what you can commonly get on the internet, like the Huatos, as Naz mentioned, her husband likes those. Those are really great. I think a really common one that's very frequently used, in fact, I see it advertised on ESPN, is Salon Pause. Have you guys ever seen that? Salon Pause? SALON and then PAS. And basically it's like, it's almost like ground up aspirin with some other herbs on a plaster, on a sticky patch, right? And so those are really good for like low back. You know, these are like for your older person's aches or pains. You know, they're outside in the garden and they come back in, they're like, oh yeah, you know, my back's sore, right? These are all the things that you're gonna like moxa or moxa box or like moxa pole, right? Moving cupping, right? Some little gua sha. You know, these things do really well with moxa, heat lamp, and so forth, right? Warming liniments, right? So like, you know, like very common one growing up was Bengay, right? Very warming liniment, right? Okay.
Time.
Yes.
Question on the plasters. How do you manage that around? Are these something that's worn for multiple days or for hours? Like, and for multiple days, do they withstand a shower or do you have to reapply?
Right. Well, this is a good segue because I was actually going to talk about application of the liniments and the poultices and the plasters.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
so the liniments, regardless of what stage, although probably a little bit more frequently in stage 1, because you want to keep that blood stasis from being broken up. You want to keep breaking up that blood stasis. You would apply the liniments probably like 3-4 times a day. The San Juan Sun, you can do a little more, like 4 or 5 times. And again, you want to like dab that on. Let me just grab one, right? So what you would do is you would dab it onto your fingers and then you would rub it in. And now it's starting to feel warm. And now it's starting to feel hot. And you want to rub that in. Now you don't have to do it as fast as I do. I do it because I'm just trying to show you one thing. I mean, you just like massage that in, right? And you rub that in. Until it starts to feel hot, right? And then you would do that 2 or 3 more times. And that's one application, okay?
Is that to warm up and break down the saps and things that we use?
I'm sorry?
No. Is that to use to like warm up the saps that are used in the formula? Like the resins?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know. I mean, I figure they're already pretty broken up because you know, they're in a liquid form. I think it's more about just making sure it penetrates into the skin and into the tissue.
That makes sense. I was just wondering because I know when I used to strain them for Evan that my hands would be sticky from all the sap that
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah,
still
yeah.
floating around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think by this time, you know, all of the essential oils are pretty much like dissolved in the solution. So I think this is more about penetration. At least that's my understanding of it. Is you want to get it like good and warm, so it opens the pores, right, and then helps it to be absorbed, and also just to, you know, push it into the skin. And so you can do that again 3-4 times a day. The poultices, so you know, I mean, like ice is actually a poultice, right? So poultices are meant to be applied for anywhere from like 15 minutes if it's like a really hot poultice, anywhere from about 15 minutes to up to maybe a couple, 3 hours. Okay. The plasters are generally not as concentrated as most of the liniments and poultices you'll make. Now you can make a poultice out of the liniment as well, which I often recommend, like some of my patients do. You know, like I just have them like pour some in, like I have them take like a couple of gauze pads, because like one is kind of like 4x4 is kind of thin. So I have them take like 2 or 3 and then just dab some of that in there and then apply it and then wrap it. And you can leave that on for like anywhere from like 3, 4, or 5 hours or so is pretty good. Same with the poultice. You can leave that on for like a couple of hours, up to maybe 3 to 5 at the most, I would say. After about 4 hours, it probably starts to, you know, lose a lot of its strength. But you can leave it on for several hours, 3, 4, 5 hours. And then with the plasters, they can be left on even longer. But again, like for safety's sake, you know, I really just have my patients limited to about 3 to 5 hours, right? And now some of them, if they're only leaving it on for a couple hours, let's say they, you know, okay, oh right, yeah, you know, I have to actually leave the house to do something, and for whatever reason they don't want that plaster on, you know, maybe they've got a meeting or something and they don't want it to smell or whatever, they just need to take it off. You can like take it off, and I have them put it on a piece of saran wrap and put that in the fridge, or like under their sink, or someplace where it's cool, like maybe in their basement, and where it's like cool and dry, and you can just have them stash that, you know, for later. It'll keep for a few days. And so that's basically like how we guide in terms of application. Any questions about that? Did that answer your question, Teresa?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. So on page 2, there's some contraindications. I do want you to just use the common sense rule. I mean, for Pete's sakes, like don't put them on your face, you know? Don't put them, you know, on the reproductive areas. Don't put them on any kind of mucous membranes, not on open wounds, not on the lower abdomen or lower back of pregnant women. Very horrible, horrible things can happen. What else? Yeah, not on open wounds, cuts, abrasions. It's only for external use. You know, people joke about the liniments about being made with vodka, ha ha ha, yeah, right? But you know, if I tell them like, if you only drink it if you either want to like vomit intensely or go to the emergency room. If it's been a while and you really want to check out the ER and see how it looks these days, go ahead and drink some. When you buy these online, like say at Camwo or wherever, oftentimes a little screen will come up and say, these are all poisonous. Are you sure you want to buy them? Some version of that, right? All right, so again, they use the same properties as regular herbs. I mean, because they're just herbs, right? So we've got bitter herbs, you've got cold herbs, right? Bitter, you've got spicy or acrid herbs. You've got sour herbs, you've got sweet herbs, right? So spicy, sometimes known as acrid, sometimes known as pungent, right? So these are all used to release the exterior, right? So if you've got an external pathogenic factor, you want something that's going to kind of like stimulate the pores to open and have this upward, outward movement, right? Bitter is very cold. It's often drying. So this is good for clearing heat and reducing swelling and inflammation. Salty is good for softening hard masses. So if somebody has like a real knot of a bruise, you know, like it's really turned into a knot or a nodule, like you want like more of the animal products. If you are philosophically, you know, opposed to that, then so be it. I understand that. So, but that is the nature of what salty does. So there are some vegetable and mineral alternatives that you can investigate. I didn't want to get too much into the details of that. But salty is really good for softening hard masses, okay? Sour is astringent, so there's really not going to be a lot of sour in anything except like an acute stop bleeding formula. Because what's the main cause of pain? Like in Chinese medicine, what causes pain?
Stagnation.
Stagnation. We don't want more stagnation, right? We don't want more holding on and pulling in, right? We want the opposite of that. But unless somebody's bleeding, you know, that's the one exception where you would apply these to an open wound. Please don't be doing that. Just wherever you are, if that happens, just stop the bleeding and get them to, you know, whatever kind of care, professional care they need, whether it's an emergency room or whatever. Please don't be like pouring stuff into like people's open wounds. Yeah, not a good idea, unless you're like a real expert at it. And then sweet is often very tonifying, very supplementing in nature. It's very nourishing. So this is really good in the later stages to help heal tissue, to nourish the blood, to nourish the qi, right? This brings in a lot of like the repair work, okay? And obviously, you know, herbs have, there's the 4 qi, right? Technically 5 qi, which is cold, cool, neutral, warm, and hot, right? So, and then also herbs are characterized by the meridian they enter. These are all accessible like on various materia medica. But basically stage 1, and actually, like, any questions about any of that before we get into the stages of trauma? Okay. All right.
Time.
Yes.
All of that in the notes somewhere.
Yes, I'm
Or
all
was that-
from my notes.
Okay, I'm confused because it looked like you were on the topicals overview to start with,
Yes.
and now moving. I got the contraindications, and now I'm moving into the stages of trauma, but I missed all of that stuff about the herbs.
Oh, it's just very briefly mentioned on page 2.
Page 2 of which
The
set of
overview?
notes?
The overview.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Do you,
The
is it not there?
topicals? I don't think it's there.
I didn't see it either.
All right, hold on one second.
You go from the use of liniments, the contraindications directly to the stages on at least the document I'm looking at.
Okay, hold on one second. This is not like super important. I mean, I just kind of tossed it in there. I don't know why you don't have it on yours. Let me see, topicals overview. It's on the one I have. I can repost it.
If it's not hugely important.
No,
I
it's
mean,
really just an afterthought. Just basically like, you know, in Roman numeral 2, use of liniments in treatment. A, contraindications. B, properties of liniment herbs. C, review the stages.
Okay, yeah. We just don't, you go from, you've subtracted out the B. The B is now review the stages. So I'll just pick it up off the recording.
Okay. Yeah, I'll repost it. I'll just resend it to you all. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why it's not there. I mean, because I just posted it the other day and this is the only copy I have. That's really weird.
Time, I have another question, and forgive me if you covered it earlier. It may have been when I had to duck out, but do we have information somewhere on contraindications for patients who, for instance, arthritis, and then they're on a lot of pain meds from Western meds? Are there contraindications that we need to be aware of for how any interaction between, with these topicals versus their prescription meds?
No, it shouldn't interact.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'll repost it. I don't know why it's showing up that way, but let me see. All right. Topicals. Overview. All right. Give me 1 second here. Okay, well, try that one. Bad gateway. Are you guys able to upload it? Because I clicked on it and I got bad gateway. 502 bad gateway. Yeah, no, there it goes. Okay, it shows up. Well, I see it right there. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, it's uploaded.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So stage 1, all acute trauma is stage 1. Okay. It's characterized by pain, heat, and swelling. There may be some redness. There will be inflammation. Whether it's felt as heat by you or the patient, just assume there's heat, because that's what's happening underneath the surface, right? As their stagnation is building. So this stage can last anywhere from like a few hours up to several weeks. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. Get my notes set up here. And like I said, with a fresh injury, always assume heat is present. Okay. So obviously your treatment strategies are going to be to clear heat, move stasis. Okay. And then that helps to bring the fresh blood and chi back into the area, as well as sometimes called remove heat toxins, because heat can be toxic, as well as, okay, good. As well as all of the fluids and materials that have spilled out into the area from the broken small micro blood vessels, as well as this intracellular fluid and contents that are now spilling out into the area, which creates the swelling, the pressure, and some of the pain, right, and the inflammation, right? So in Western medicine, inflammation is the major enemy, right? So everything is about reducing inflammation, and and there's some value to that. We want to reduce inflammation. What we don't want to do is freeze everything in place. So yeah, ice is great after 15 minutes because it just numbs you out. The problem is after the first 5 to 10 minutes at the most, what happens is it's no longer just imparting the cooling properties, right? But it's now freezing everything, right? Because cold contracts, so it's freezing everything in place, and you don't want that. Also, over time, it damages the wei qi. The wei qi is yang qi, and that's hot in nature. So the inflammatory response is actually the normal healthy response. What you want to help the body to do which is to kind of outsmart it because it has a very basic, raw animal intelligence to it. So it doesn't care if we're pretty. It doesn't care if we've got great range of motion. It doesn't care if we're graceful. And it really doesn't care so much that we're in a little bit of pain. So that stagnation is meant to protect us from being stupid and continuing to use it. So, but we have a higher standard. So we want to have good range of motion. We want to have good flexibility. We want to be pain-free, right? So we have looked to nature to improve upon the most basic fundamental healing response of the body and enhance it with the use of topicals as well as internal herbs, which are great. I'm not going to cover that. It's far too complicated to get into B syndrome herbs and formulas. But suffice it to say, you know, all of the topicals that you'll use in stage 1 are all about clearing heat, are all about moving stagnant blood and qi, resolving heat toxins, reducing swelling, and alleviating pain. So those are like your major treatment strategies, okay? So over time, the inflammation will subside, the swelling will subside. And again, in the beginning, you know, these are going to be things that your patients are going to say, yeah, I've tried hot, I've tried cold. It's better with cold, okay? So that stage 1 is always going to feel a little bit better with cold. Sometimes people may mix it up a little bit, but more often than not, when they're doing that, they've had some experience with it because it's a chronic injury, and this is a re-aggravation or a flaring up of a chronic injury. So stage 2 begins when the inflammation subsides. There's not much swelling anymore, hardly any. There's probably a little bit of residual heat, so you want to be mindful of that. So we don't want to use anything too hot in nature for stage 2. We want to start bringing in the warming to be sure. This also helps to repair the wei qi in the area. Thus, it helps to help repair the sinew meridian damage that's been done, right? So now your primary issue is not going to be clearing the heat with the secondary blood stagnation. Blood stagnation and qi stagnation are going to be primary, right? So, and then continuing to move the blood, continuing to move the qi, deal with a little bit of residual heat, but we also like want to warm, bring in that yang qi, right? To help the sinew meridians repair, which also protect, right? We want to like nourish the blood. We want to nourish the qi, keep things moving. And we also maybe want to do, you know, like points and treatments to kind of dispel cold, right? As well as the topicals, which will help dispel any remaining, any developing cold that's gotten into the area because of the damaged wei qi, right? Wind can invade and bring in cold with it or damp with it. So we want to, those warming herbs, those blood moving herbs in the topicals can help protect the area, drive out any residual cold. It's also a balance of cool and warm, so that's like a little bit of cooling going on, but a lot of blood moving and qi moving herbs. Okay, so that's your main strategy is resolving the blood stasis, resolving the qi stasis, moving that, clearing any residual heat, reducing any residual swelling, and of course alleviating pain. Okay, all right, and then stage 3, this is going to be like, you know, somebody comes in for like long-term chronic arthritis, something, maybe like a flare-up of something that they've had before. Maybe they're getting older and they're still, you know, they still like to work on their cars. They like to maybe range a lot of stuff in their house, you know, home improvements, a lot of women, you know, like moving furniture around, you know, or a lot of yard work. People do a lot of gardening or some other hobby that's physical in nature or that leaves them outside exposed to the elements, right? Or they're, you know, they've worked out maybe all their life and now they're getting older, you know, over 40s and, you know, working out. There's a lot more muscle soreness than there used to be. You know, a lot more achy joints when the weather changes, right? You know, things like that. So you're going to be dealing with muscles, you're going to be dealing with joints. Okay, so there's a number of things in A Tooth from Tiger's Mouth that talk about, you know, these different formulas in detail. But basically, stage 3 is more about warming. So some of these are from the warm to the hot, right? Because over time, in the past, maybe they've had injuries or exposure to the exterior, right? Exposure to the weather, the elements, and they have or injured themselves and they've iced things, or they were athletes. Like we were always taught to ice, 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 ice. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to, like, you know, tape ice packs to my knees and I leave them on for like an hour. Oh my God, I wish I had known better. Yes, Brooke. Oh, you're like, yes, you're affirming. Yes. Ice, 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 right? You know, I can't tell you how many times I've iced my neck. Hi, right? So Maron, it's awful. So, you know, we've damaged the wei qi, we've damaged the sinews. Cold has penetrated into the interior, into the muscle fibers, into the coolie, the space between the fascia and the muscle. And so, and entered the joints, which is even worse, right? And then we have damp on top of that, a damp diet, damp lifestyle, damp medications, you know, antibiotics, cold and damp. And so that drives things into the joints. And then over time, we just lose qi. And, you know, as our yang qi depletes, we just can't adapt any longer. So a lot of older folks, you know, they're more active again, or they're still as active as they were, but now they just can't recover as much. This is why people love steroids. It makes you feel like you're 18 again. It's awesome. Any of you have ever taken a course of steroids? Boy, you get a lot of stuff done, let me tell you, right? I mean, it's like,
You start cleaning your entire house at like 2 in the morning.
right. I mean, it's amazing. You're very productive.
Mostly.
Huh? What was that? Okay, so I thought I heard somebody say something. But yeah, I mean, you feel like you're 18 again. It's awesome. You know, your joints don't hurt and you got lots of energy and boy, you're just burning your jing. So, you know, you're just basically like just all these resources of like jing and yang qi are just now being like released into the system. And it's like, all of a sudden, like you go to your ATM and you're just pulling out all your cash and you're going, I'm rich. But it's very depleting over time. Which is why it has such a profound effect on the reproductive system. And it also will it'll also deplete the kidneys to the point where then heart fire will start blazing and then you'll start going crazy, right? That's like roid rage. You know, people have heard about that, right? But it is good for repair. So you don't want something like that. You want something that's going to reduce inflammation and warm and nourish without depleting your jing. So stage 3 is like, these formulas are really great for flare-ups, acute flare-ups of chronic problems that have been happening for a long time, right? Which is the definition of chronic. All right, let's see here. Okay, any questions about the stages? All right, so I've given you quite a bit. So I'm still looking at the overview, page 3, when to use what. So I've just given you a brief overview, and we'll go into detail in a little bit, and we'll probably finish early. But stage 1, so there's the San Huang Sun, which I mentioned, the 3 yellow powder. And it's interesting because when I examine what is available for sale, it's interesting that one of the yellow powders is a little bit expensive. And so a lot of what you get in the commercially available San Huang San is actually Yang San. They only have 2 of the yellows. They're ripping you off, cheapskates. So you wanna be mindful about what you're getting, and you wanna get them from a reputable dealer, or you can buy them from Daniel and I. Yeah. And then so there's the Dida Jiao, which is the trauma liniment. Dida means fall strike, right? So the Ju or the Jiao means liquor or wine. So these can be effective for all the stages, but they're used mostly in stage 1. You know, a Dida Jiao is kind of like Band-Aid, you know what I mean? Or adhesive bandage. I mean, you know, there's like a gazillion Dida Jiaos or Dida Jiaos. And so you want, obviously, you know, you'll buy some that are explicitly stated, you know, in the packaging for acute or chronic, right? So anything acute, that's going to be stage 1. So this is like, you know, martial artists, when you get hit and fall down, right? This is really good for bruises, strains, sprains, any kind of acute trauma, impact trauma. This is phenomenal for that, right? So again, don't apply this to open wounds. And then stage 2 would be more like your muscle rejuvenating oils, your tendon lotions. So these would be things where you can use a San Huang Sung to some degree at like the beginning of stage 2, where like, you know, it's been like 3, 4, 5 days and the swelling is mostly gone, but not completely gone. So around the area where there's the most swelling, you can use the San Huang Sung, and around the adjacent area, you can use the warmer liniments and plasters and poultices. Also, so for if it's like a muscle area, things like Posamon, our tendon liniment, our heart dragon muscle rejuvenating oil, which is, it's like Posamon, which I think is better. Let's see, what else is good? There's this other stuff which is pretty good. It's a little on the warmer side, so I would definitely make sure that you're like in stage 2, where there's not much inflammation, where there's really no inflammation or swelling. I don't know if you can see it. I got this at Whole Foods one day. I found it. It's called Cerayan Gel, and it's made by Soothing Touch. Very nice. And it shows you an Indian yogi, right? Because he's sitting there meditating like that for 8 hours, so his joints get sore, and he uses this. All right. I actually like this a lot. This is good stuff. Some people like Topricin a lot. Topricin is kind of like the Arnica, which is like a more stage 1. Arnica is stage 1. That's very cooling, and in fact, it feels very cooling. And it's a wonderful, wonderful topical. The Topricin is really great. I have some of that in my office. Again, it's like the Arnica. Like 50% of your patients are going to love it. They're going to be like, "Hey, you know, actually, I don't really need a treatment, but can I get some more Topricin?" So you may become a victim of your own success with your topicals. But 50% of the people are like, "Yeah, I tried that. It didn't do anything." So these also are really good stage 1, these CBD clinics. So this is level 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and each level goes up in price. This is about $45 to $50. It's highly mentholated. It is a CBD ointment. I don't know if you can see it. It looks sort of like Vaseline, and it kind of goes on like Vaseline. It's yellow. It's very mentholated. Yeah, it's 16% menthol and 11% camphor. And if you don't know percentage, that's a lot. So that's a good stage 1. The level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1 are good stage 2 and 3. Okay. The 5, which is quite expensive, that's really good for stage 1. Other stage 2s, so like if you go online and you get Dr. Schur's, SHI, I think H, he's got a liniment that is really good for almost all stages. I would say like late stage 1, definitely good for stage 2, very good for stage 3. White flower oil, which actually doesn't have any ingredients that are made with white flowers. It's just that the guy who came up with the formula, his favorite plant was this certain plant that had this really pretty white, it was like a pretty white flower. So he calls it white flower oil, but it doesn't have any of that actual flower in it. It's clear liniment. That's really good for late stage 1, stage 2, definitely stage 3. White flower oil is good. Quan Lung oil is really good. The tendon lotion. So after the tendons aren't like super sore to the touch, but maybe sore with pressure, then you're more into stage 2, right? So you can use that more like tendon lotions, things like that for the more connective tissue. Stage 3, the tendon lotion is good. There's a lot of muscle liniments. This is when you want to use things like your tiger balms, tiger liniments, the 701 plaster, the Wu-Tang plaster, like those are hot, right? So you want to use the Salonpas, is good for stage 2 and stage 3. But a lot of the ones that are like, have like a tremendous amount of like menthol and camphor, while they can be used in stage 1 a little bit because they're counter irritants, if there's a lot of swelling, it could aggravate that. But like these are, you know, stage 3, you're going to be using like a lot of your hot herbs, hot liniments and plasters. Yui oil is another one that's actually made from mugwort. It's actually got mugwort in it, and that's really good for the joints, especially when it's worse in the cold. So this is very warming, right? Also very moving, so it's good with damp, cold conditions, right? These arthritis conditions that are worse in like cold, rainy weather. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about individual liniments for the different stages, but I just give you a few there just to, you know, just to give you an example. You can also use these after cupping. So you can, you know, massage the liniments in, like you can do the cupping and the gua sha, and then you can put the liniments in. If there's not a lot of like blood evacuating from the surface after the gua sha, you know, if you're not getting like those little tiny petechia where like, I can't remember what it's like, it's something like evasculating or something, like, I can't remember what but basically like blood is coming out of the small vessels. If you're not getting a lot of that, you can put liniment on that. You can put liniment on the area that you've cupped. You can put liniment on the area that you've gua sha'd, provided there's no like weeping bruises, right? There's no weeping sha. Okay, let's just put it that way. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So usually the liniment will be like what I put on last. So I'll do my treatments. I'll maybe do cupping, gua sha if indicated. Then I do my needles. And then the very last thing I'll do is massage some liniments in into the patient. Right? So that's generally comes last. The exception to that might be if it's a stage 1 injury, it's very fresh. It's very like they come in, they just sprained their ankle, you know, they've just injured their wrist. You know, maybe injured their shoulder. I might put some San Huang San or trauma liniment on first and then do my treatment, because I may not be doing a lot in the local area. I'll be doing more distal work. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, it's very good to combine with other therapies more often than not. If it's not an acute, serious injury, I will do liniments last, and I'll kind of, it's a nice way to send people off. You know, they're nice and relaxed. You massage this in. It's very comforting, right? You can practice your 5 elements styles of touch, right? Maybe you give them reassuring touch. Maybe it's more of a partnering touch, you know, very loving, warm, you know, maybe it's very soothing and sympathetic, right? You know, try the different types of touch, right? It's very nice. But I generally do that last unless somebody has a really serious, significant injury. They come in, it's like very new, very acute. And then I might put like either the San Huang San or the trauma liniment on first, and then I'll do my distal treatments. Okay. All right. Let's take a break until 11 and then we'll come back. All right, so I just want to bring your attention to the item called Topicals by Stage. Okay, that is basically 3 pages. Okay, so what I've done is I've included also on Canvas the herbal product guide that was put together by this guy named, I think is Cook, David Cook. Let's see, David Bach. Excuse me, David Bach. And he's done a lot of research, and he put together this product guide, and he divided it up into different categories. And these categories are tissue damage from trauma, strains, tears, bleeding, joint strain or sprain, overworked muscles, old or cold injuries, re-injured joints, red painful muscles, and abrasions or cuts. And so what I did is I took a lot of that out and arranged them by stage. And there is some overlap. There is some overlap. So what's nice is he's got these entirely divided up into large categories alphabetically. What I did is I took them and pulled them out and divided them up and organized them by stage for you to make it a little bit easier, and they are alphabetized. So some are going to be topical liniments, some are going to be plasters. Depending on the name, I've put it in, alphabetically, but it should be pretty obvious. And if you want, you can always like double check and cross-reference it and get like sort of like the thermal nature. But the stage will really tell you the thermal nature. And he's divided up a little bit into more categories, right? And he's given you a couple little notes like this linament's hot, this is more aromatic, these two are warm, this next one's hot, this next one's, best for like burn creams. Oh yeah, that's another thing that Daniel and I also made is these two different burn creams, which are really cool. So obviously that would be a stage 1 burn. And so we've included herbs that are very cooling and cold, but also balancing. It's like chi moving, as well as helps to regenerate the flesh, which is pretty cool. But anyway, this is like a nice thing to have on hand when you're going to buy different things, because when you buy a lot of the liniments, in order to sort of steer clear of problems with the FDA, they all say pretty much the same thing. Indicated for, the occasional use for, sore achy joints. It's like the kind of like the standard pablum that they put, on like the back of like everything. It'll be like, for occasional relief from sore achy joints and muscles, right? So it's a nice way of sort of CYA, regarding the FDA, but it doesn't really tell you anything. And so that's why I appreciate all the work that this guy David Bach did, and others. And so just from his information from different books, I've included all of these in the different stages, which you can keep as a reference. So when you go to buy things, you'll have a sense of like how you can use them, because obviously the stage will tell you a little bit about like the thermal nature and what they do. There's a couple of things that I keep on hand, a few things that I'm out of or just didn't bring from my office. I've included that in this one piece called some items in my medicine chest. And so these are the things that I keep on hand in my office and some at home, okay? Some of which are the plasters, the arnica gel. There's something called boswellia cream, which is basically capsaicin in a cream format. It is very hot. It is very warming. So if you apply this with your bare hands onto a patient or yourself or someone else, wash your hands a couple, 3 times and like wash them vigorously, like with a lot of soap, because God help you if you apply it and then you touch your face, because it really burns. And if you get it near your eyes, it's really, really uncomfortable. So like important safety tip, like no joke. A lot of these stage 3s, like I would put them on either with like gloves or like the vinyl gloves, or if you do put them on with your hand, with your bare hands, make sure you wash them with a good hearty soap and warm water, and then dry them off and then wash them again. Because if you touch your face or around your eyes, it's going to really be uncomfortable. There's the Cheech Chung. I kind of laugh. It's like the Cheech and Chong pain relieving plaster. I think it was the original CBD plaster. But that's very hot. It's a very, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Chi Chung. And it's the Chung, like as in Chung as in upright chi or healing chi or correct chi, right? Kath Bartlett down in North Carolina, she's got some Flying Dragon oil, which is nice. She makes, it's also very oily. I will say it has a very short shelf life. It seems to go bad pretty quickly. And it's, you know, it's not bad. It's not bad. She did a decent job with it. There's the Huato medicated plasters, which I mentioned, the Kwanlung oil, which is quite warm. It can be good for like sort of like the end of stage 2 when, you know, there's no swelling, there's no residual heat, there's no inflammation. You know, it's been like a week or so. If it's healing quickly, you can start using that. I think it's quite warm, so I generally leave it just with stage 3. It's got basically like, you know, a lot of these which have camphor and wintergreen and methyl salicylate. Just a brief word on those. So these are called counter irritants. Does anyone know what a counter irritant is? It's kind of like saying to your central nervous system when it's in pain, look over there, right? It's basically like fools your nervous system into like interrupting the pain signal. It's not like a TENS machine. A TENS machine is really, well, it is interrupting a signal, yes. So it is like that in that way. So forgive me, yes. So it is like that. It interrupts the signal from the central nervous system. In the TENS machine, it's like it interrupts the signal to the muscle to interrupt the signal that says contract, right? So that actually is like less distracting and more interrupting. Yeah. So it's a very direct interruption in the signal that's being sent by a central nervous system to the surrounding muscle tissue to contract, right? So yeah, so it is. It's meant to be like a signal interrupter, like a TENS machine. But this has analgesic properties because it actually stimulates an immune response, which is basically to bring blood and qi to the area. And it gives you the sensation that it's really hot when it's actually quite cool, right? So Kwanlung oil has a lot of other things in it though that are quite warm as well as counter irritating. The Narion gel is really good for stage 2 and 3. The far infrared patches, golden sunshine patches, the Wu-Tang patches, really good. Posemon is really good. I mentioned some of the herbs that are in there. It's interesting, the Posemon has cinnamon in it, which interestingly like has a lot of philosophical and mystical properties. Very briefly, cinnamon, when you burn it, drives out the odor of dead things. It's meant to like cast away evil spirits. So on a practical level, if you live in an area where you are exposed to wildlife and some of that wildlife may actually get into your house, like maybe birds have nested, like burrowed in a little hole into your house and have nested in there, and then maybe one of them dies, or a squirrel gets into your eaves in your attic and dies, or God help you, a raccoon gets in your house and dies. I had one patient tell me that was just awful. You can burn cinnamon candles, not like the kind you get at Yankee Candle that are filled with all kinds of crap and a little bit of cinnamon. I mean, like a cinnamon candle. Or you can mix cinnamon into a paste and burn that, and that will drive out the odor of dead things. If you feel like your house is haunted, the Sufi tradition has a lot of prayers actually especially for that. But if you don't know those, because who doesn't know Arabic these days? But if you don't know those, you can say your own prayer over this burning cinnamon candle, or burn cinnamon, and like make a paste and burn it, and like take the smoke and just kind of clear your house. So that can be really helpful. That was neat. I actually had one of my patients do that, who was actually like this hardcore Christian. She did it anyway, God bless her. And she said it was really helpful. So I just had her repeat like the Lord's Prayer while she was like burning the cinnamon. And it was pretty cool. Yeah, she bought this house and she discovered that like after she and her family were having like nightmares for a month, she discovered that somebody had been murdered in that house before she owned it. So apparently it was quite disruptive spirit in several interesting ways. But anyway, Posemon has got cinnamon oil, so it drives out, if you think about, drives out the evil Shei Chi, right? It's very warming and very nourishing. So it's really good. Posemon is not so much used for joints. It's one of these that's really great for muscles, okay? And so Resinol K, which I don't have with me, unfortunately, I have some in my office. That is a phenomenal product. If you just Google it, you can get it. It is on the pricey side. It's the Cadillac, or maybe even the Audi of liniments. It is quite good. I use it mostly for stage 1. It's phenomenal for bruising. So has any of you ever like injured yourself and been bruised? Okay, a couple of you. One of the things you can do, which is really cool, it's kind of like, it's like you're just ripping the kitchen sink out and throwing it at your bruise, but it's really effective, especially if, you're someone that like just can't stay home and put your ankle up and, stay off it. So what I have people do is I have them make a paste of Yunnan Baya powder, and arnica and resinol K. And they make that into a paste, and I have them make a poultice out of that and apply that to their skin and like gently, affix that into place and leave that on for a good 3 to 5 hours. And they can put that on a couple times a day over a bruise, especially a painful bruise. And it is extraordinary. I mean, it's almost miraculous. It's a little bit freaky how well this works. It like, I don't know, it cuts like the healing time by, I would say, about like 66%. It's phenomenal. It draws out a lot of the heat. It helps to move the stagnant blood. Resinol K is a phenomenal blood mover and blood stasis cracker. They often talk about certain herbs as cracking blood stasis, and they use that term quite literally when you've got blood like really like so stagnant, it's almost like it's coagulated in the joints. And if you've broken a bone or fractured a bone, you know what I'm talking about, or sprained yourself really horribly. You know what I mean. It's really painful. It's like a very intense, sharp pain. So this is really good for bruises, really good for severe injuries where there's sharp pain. And if it's very acute, you can mix the resinol K with the arnica and the Yunnan Bayao powder into a paste and make a poultice out of that. Okay. Yes.
How is it for older people who have chronic bruising? Maybe somebody who's on Coumadin, but a lot of older people have a lot of chronic bruising.
So there's a difference. So I haven't used it for the spontaneous bruises that come without injury. Like older folks, they just spontaneously, their blood vessels break with certain movements. I have not tried it with that. I'm a little leery, because I'm concerned that the skin is so thin that the hot nature of it, combined with the intense cold nature of it, not the hot nature, but the intense cold nature of it, might be too much. Yeah, I'm a little leery about that. I have to do a little bit more research about that. Like, generally what I have people do for that is just like a little bit of arnica and like the wanhua oil can be good for that. But I've never tried it on that. But if it's good for anybody that has like severe bruising. But I'm talking about like a trauma bruise, like a bruise from some kind of impact trauma, rather than the spontaneous bleeding that they have. Like, you just really have to shore up internally the spleen chi, right, to hold the blood into place. Because a lot of times those don't hurt. a lot of times they don't even know it's there until they see it. Like, oh yeah, right. So it's, this is more of like what I'm talking about is more of an analgesic as well as a healing plaster or poultice. Right. So I've listed a bunch of others, San Huang San Tendon Lotion, Tiger Balm, the patches, Wan Hua. It's nice. It's because it's not so cold, but it is breaking up blood stasis. So, oftentimes I'll just have like the older folks put the Wan Hua oil for that kind of bruising, that spontaneous bleeding bruising. It's also nice for sore joints. Any kind of like hard mass is good. And I've listed some other things there. You can take a look at that. And again, a lot of these, especially the ones that are like primarily camphor, wintergreen, methyl salicylate, menthol, you can use them in small amounts for every stage. I use them more for stage 2 and 3, but they can, if in a pinch, if that's all you've got, you can use that in stage 1. Yeah. All right. All right. So, like I said, when I use these, generally, more often than not, the liniment is what I put on last. I'll do my cupping. I'll do some gua sha if necessary. If there's no weeping sha, if blood's not oozing out of the sha, then you can apply liniment on it. If there is a little bit, just get like a clean, like sterile bandage, like a sterile gauze, or my friend from Belgium, sterile gauze. She's very cute. She's Belgian. The sterile gauze. Put that on there and like dry up all the blood, and then and then after a little bit, then you can put some liniment on. Very helpful. So it's a nice way to end a treatment. Again, unless they're like coming in with an acute, serious injury, then I'll put like either the San Huang San, the Herbalize, or the trauma liniment on, and then I'll get to work. Okay. Yeah, I don't put this on over any areas that I've just bled. So don't do that. If you want, one of the things you can do is you can kind of put your thumb over the area where you bled, and then you can like apply some kind of topical around that to make sure it doesn't get into the spot where you just bled. Okay. All right. Any questions about any of that? No questions? All right, I figured I'd just briefly show you like my stash, like here's some alcohol waiting to be used. I just harvested some liniments. I haven't put the labels on yet. Here's some more herbs that we're about to use. Right. And then here's where I keep a lot of my liniments down here, right? I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, these are the nice Italian jars. I really like these. They have like this really easy, nice clip top. It's not a screw top, because these over time like can leak a little bit. And then after they've been soaking, like, see, this is like the last of one that I had from 11/16, right? This is pretty old. And you can see there's just some dregs left, right? I don't know if you can see that or not. Made in the USA. And so that, these can get sticky. The lids can get really sticky, and they can become like kind of a bear to unscrew. You have to like beat on them a while and soak them under like hot water to get these open. That's why I like these. These are a little bit easier to open and close. But I've got like a whole bunch down here, like more down there. This is my old treatment records, but I've got more down here. There's like 2 rows of that. I've got some more over here. And then over here is like the first of the 5-gallon jars, right? This is the wind, cold, damp formula. We just made that. And it's interesting because like 5 gallons, it's like, it seems like a lot, but it really isn't like that big of a jar or lid. I get these from Uline. You can buy them like 3 at a time. I think they're like $11 each. And then you can get like this extra lid that comes on, that clips on. And so that's That's my liniments. And, you know, just like works. But like I just harvested some here from, this was like the last of the tendon lotion from like around Thanksgiving of 16, right? You know, you can just filter it. And you just put them in these like 2-ounce jars. You know, so like I like mine from a specialty bottle. They come like this. These are some clear ones that I just got. I really like the blue jars a lot. There's some research that states that the majority of the female consumers polled will predominantly buy things in a blue jar versus a brown jar when given a choice. So we put a lot of our liniments in blue jars, which also is one of my favorite colors next to purple. So you can't go wrong with that. But that's basically, you know, our little setup. And I would encourage you, you know, to experiment with it if you see fit. There's some basic recipes. I'm not going to share with you some of my recipes, but I will share a couple of them with you. But some of the other ones are more like that's like our discovery.
Time.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you set pricing for when you sell it to your patients. How do you have a formula, or do you just do it based on what the market charges?
That's a really good question. And that's something that we're sitting with, because at some point you have to do kind of like a cost benefit analysis. And right now I'm not including my time and my labor in it. Right. So, because it's been sort of like, just like a, you know, kitchen table business, you know, and it's really not meant to make me a lot of money. I really originally did it because I wanted to give my patients a cheap alternative. So originally I was just charging like $10 a bottle, because I was looking around online and most things were like 12 to 15. And I thought, well, you know, 10's fair. And, you know, if you look at like Posamon, I mean, it's like $22 for 1.2 ounces, right? So, you know, again, they come in a nice printed metal tin. So I would say, you know, what I always do when I make a decision is I go inside and I do this very long meditative process, which can take days or weeks to come up with an answer, sometimes not that long. And that's what I get. So right now I'm selling them for $12.50, just based on, you know, the time and the effort, as well as the cost of materials and things like that. And also then I'm comparing that to what else is out there that is available for sale, and what are they charging. And so, you know, to be sort of like in the range of that, but trying to also be a little bit cheaper, like more inexpensive, to make it more accessible. So that's my goal. I mean, honestly, between like you, me, and everyone who's watching this recording, I mean, my goal is to have our liniments on the shelf of every CVS in America. I mean, that's my goal.
Very cool.
Especially the San Juan Sun, because I think ice is very damaging. I mean, it's not awful, but it's just used improperly, you know, because people way over ice. They ice too frequently and they ice for too long. I'm not against ice hypothetically or theoretically, because it's good for like 5 to 10 minutes out of every hour. And it's also good if you sometimes alternate between hot and cold. But like any other medicine, it has its dosage, it has its timing, and it has its indications. So it has to be used properly. But my goal is to provide like the burn cream and the San Juan Sun, the herbal ice, and these liniments to everybody, because this is like the original folk medicine. I mean, this is what, you know, people, you know, and people don't realize in America, in the United States, at the beginning, most people brewed their own beer. Most people made these types of liniments, you know. This was very common. So I want to bring back the sort of that, you know, kind of like, I don't know if American spirit, but traditional spirit, where, you know, we're using more natural alternatives. And then that way, when we have to use these strong pharmaceuticals, you know, that they're there and they don't cause as much problem, because we're not over relying on them. You know, I'm not against antibiotics. If it weren't for antibiotics, I'd be dead twice. So, I'm not against these strong medicines and pharmaceuticals, but I think that we rely on them too much. And I think that there's a lot of natural alternatives, that come from the earth that, are more vitality enhancing. And they have, when you make something for your patient, it has your chi in it. It has your love in it. And, you can't put a price tag on that. Yeah. So that's why I make them, just because it's fun, in that goofy, I'm a little bit of a geek. But I enjoy making these things, and it's nice and social. Daniel and I get together and with our masks, and we get all this stuff together, and we're making it. It's just a lot of oohing and ahhing over it. It's cool. I really like it. So
That's great.
the
Thank
pricing
you.
is like, think about the cost of your materials, think about the cost of your time, think about the cost of your labor, and then look at like what else is out there and what value do you put on it. Yeah. All right. So we're coming up to 11:30. I don't really have much else on this topic. I would definitely encourage you to, just look through this stuff and keep it handy. And you're going to be using some of the material here on your final exam. If you have any questions about the final, just let me know, and I'm happy to answer. I've given it to you now because some of them require a little bit more thought and a little bit more energy. So I wanted to give you adequate time for that. You've got, several weeks, at least, I think, till the end of the trimester. So that's at least 2 or 3 more weeks. All right.
Time,
And,
I haven't, can I ask
yeah.
a question about the final? I haven't looked at it yet. It